What is up? Did you think we were going to let you down in the semifinals? Are you kidding me? I'm having some internet issues. Hopefully it's not affecting this intro. And I know what you're thinking. Great. Ryan's doing the intro, which means no Joe Zolo this week, and we have to deal with him hosting the show. First of all, don't ever interrupt my intros. Second of all, you're absolutely right. While Joe's off spending time with family, we all know he just couldn't face the music on how terrible he's doing in the fantasy playoffs. Did he even make the playoffs? Let's get into it. Good evening, and what is up? Welcome to No Punt Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. No Joe Zolo this week. I am your host, Ryan Weisse. With me, as always, though this show really isn't a with always show over the last 2 months. Josh Hudson, how are you doing this evening?
I'm basking in your laughter over Joe making the playoffs.
Yeah.
Oh, that was lovely.
I'm sure I'll get a fun text about that one tomorrow.
I'm sure you will.
In the group chat, so we'll both see it. First and foremost, Merry Christmas, all. I decided to turn my view over for a little bit since this will be our last show before we celebrate the holiday. I hope you guys all have a great one out there. Whatever you celebrate it well. Josh, it's time to talk Week 16, but there was some interesting stuff that happened in Week 15 that we should probably start the whole thing with. I think one I think you probably put this first because you expected Joe to be here. But on Friday, the Chargers finally fire Brandon Staley. They also fired Tom Telesco. Does this fix the Chargers?
Well, nothing's going to fix the Chargers until they bring in somebody that can actually coach up Justin Herbert. And I don't know, maybe use Austin Eckler out of the backfield. Like, he's so good at being used that way. So I don't know. It's going to be rough sledding this week. I'll tell you that much.
Well, you had to fire him after, 42-0 at halftime and then 63-21 at the end of the game. So
bad. Very bad.
Nothing real good to talk about there. Caesar, thanks for always being one of the first ones to jump in. Good to see you. Craig, welcome. We'll get to your question here in just a few seconds. When Josh gets an opportunity to talk to Dak Prescott, he doesn't want to miss that opportunity.
No, you are not wrong.
Desmond Ridder bench, Taylor Heinicke taking back over for the Falcons, and then Arthur Blank giving just a glowing recommendation of Arthur Smith. We're going to let the season play out. There's 3 games left. We'll go from there. Josh, this has to mean the end for Arthur Smith, and this is just a coach who doesn't want to let this guy go, right?
Oh, we can only hope. 3 more games. Can't wait.
It's going to be interesting because they're clearly going to go in with their core. And you have to think they're going to want to attack quarterback. But the question is, are they going to want to attack quarterback in the draft and give their new coach a young guy? Or are they going to maybe try to get one of these veteran backups, Gardner Minshew, Jake Browning, the guys we've talked about going to this team for a little while?
I'm telling you, I think really what they need to do, especially if Chicago ends up with that number 1 overall pick, they need to go in and inquire about Justin Fields. Because much like the Chargers, with the skill players that Atlanta has, and I say all they're missing is a quarterback. That's a big all. I get it. But that is a system. That is a talent pool where an incoming head coach has got to be salivating.
Yeah. You're coming into 3 first-round picks at the three of the 4 most important positions. So, let's go ahead and attack that. Ja'Marr Chase, what they call it, an AC joint sprain, not going to play Week 16. That's a Saturday game versus Pittsburgh, so adjust your lineups there. CJ Stroud remains in concussion protocol, likely out Sunday. Josh, I thought I saw that he was out Sunday. I was giving someone advice earlier, and they pointed it out to me. Aaron Rodgers.
I don't know that they've officially ruled him out, much like they haven't technically officially ruled out Ja'Marr Chase, as noticed by Sleeper not putting the out tag next to them.
Yeah.
But it's being reported that he is not likely to play. But again, nothing is 100% official on either of those.
And then Aaron Rodgers was activated off the IR, but Robert Saleh came and said that he will not play again this season.
Yeah, that's
Zach
a
Wilson,
morale boost, really, just having him on the sideline.
I say have him on the sidelines, especially since Zach
lose
Wilson
their next 3 games.
Yeah, Zach Wilson's still in concussion protocol. I almost made my downside this week that the Jets won't score again any points. So.
Yeah, but then you look at the defense that they're playing and you say they're good for at least a touchdown.
Certainly against Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is playable this week. Trevor Lawrence still in concussion protocol. Jonathan Taylor is said to be progressing well, considered day to day. I noticed Sleeper did the update that he was taken from questionable to healthy, making out like there's not even an injury tag. Now, official injury tags don't start dropping yet, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Philadelphia guard Landon Dickerson has thumb surgery. He is not going to go to IR.
There's a specific reason I put that one in there, Ryan. We'll get to it in a little bit.
I was like, interesting. And then Baltimore placed my guy, Keaton Mitchell, on IR, season-ending injury. Melvin Gordon activated from the practice squad. Melvin Gordon played like 1 game with them earlier this season. Actually didn't do half bad. Chris Olave is expected to play Thursday night. That's pretty much what we're looking at on the early notes heading into week 16. Josh, the Chris Olave thing is pretty interesting to me because this doesn't appear to be a great game to bring him back in, but the Saints certainly need to win. So I'm going to be interested to see how that plays out because they have no other wide receivers. Michael Thomas is still on IR. Rashid Shaheed didn't do a whole lot last week. They're relying on Chris Olave to be on the field and be their everyman. For fantasy managers, can we depend on him on a short week coming back from injury and not a great matchup?
Yeah, I don't love this matchup at all against the Rams. The Rams defense has played really well. Obviously, coming off a short week, Olave, missed last week, so hopefully he's able to kind of get back up and rolling. But he's been in and on and off the injury report all season, and miraculously been playing at certain stretches.
Yeah,
but if he's not playing, this has to be an Alvin Kamara type game. It's literally the only way the Saints can stay alive. And I'm not 100% convinced that even Kamara can be the Alvin Kamara of old in this game.
And that's what I was going to say is this seems like the kind of game where Kamara might see 15 targets for 11 yards like we saw in his first game back sort of.
Well, and I mean, you think that, hey, Olave's out. Maybe they utilize Juwan Johnson more. Maybe they utilize Taysom Hill more. Juwan Johnson had 2 catches. Granted, one of them was a touchdown last week. But, this is really just – it's a befuddling Saints offense. When there is no Chris Olave – Pete Carmichael, the offensive coordinator, has no fucking clue.
They don't know what to do.
None.
Exactly.
No clue. They're throwing up prayers to Keith Kirkwood or whatever his name is.
Yep.
Yeah. Huh? Seriously?
Well, yeah. I'll never forgive them for when I had to mention Lynn Bowden's name again. Lynn Bowden. I don't even remember how to pronounce the kid's name, but I didn't know he was even on an active NFL roster. But when all this stuff started with Olave, that's the kind of things we're running into right now. And it's going to be an interesting one. Thursday games are already hard, and we've had all these weird ambiguities around these primetime games. Last week, we didn't know who was going to play quarterback for either team until about an hour before the Monday night game. And now we get a Thursday night game where, at the very least, one team's star wide receiver is not playing or may not be playing or could. Who knows? I'm not looking forward to the Thursday night game is the thing I'm trying to get my point across here.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I don't think any of us were really looking forward to last Thursday either. And then look at that. Granted, it wasn't the most entertaining game to watch because it was a blowout.
But for fantasy purposes,
it was a hell of a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, and player, they didn't do great because guys like Trey Tucker and Jahmyr White stepped in. But Devontae Adams got his. Jacoby Myers didn't have a bad game. Josh Palmer popped off at the end of the game. Quentin Johnston got a damn touchdown. So these are the names you were hoping were going to shine. You just didn't know. I was just going to say you didn't know it was garbage time for them to do anything. So let's get into a little bit of questions to get started. And I want to start at the bottom here. Craig, thanks, buddy. We love having you. We love having you tune in every now and then, and we love having you or helping you make the playoffs. We're here to help, and we're going to start with Craig's first question. Josh, Craig wants to know what's going on with these NFC East quarterbacks. Do we think Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott can rebound from very ugly games? Now, Hurts got it done on the ground, obviously. Couldn't really do it through the air. But Dak Prescott in that Buffalo Bills game, PU.
Yeah, Prescott definitely was not great. I'm going to touch on Prescott a little bit later. Spoiler alert, he is one of my downsides this week. I'm not a big fan of Dak Prescott. But Jalen Hurts, I think, is going to be fine. This team put up I think they averaged over 30 points a game against the Giants last season and beating them 3 times, including once in the playoffs. This is going to be the first time that they've played the Giants this year. And newsflash, the Giants are even worse than last year. So I'm really not that worried about Jalen Hurts this week. You can have a very bad game plan on offense against a very bad team, and it looked like genius work. That's probably how the Eagles got to 10 wins so far this year, is what it feels like, because that offensive play calling has been atrocious. I mean, just listening to Sirianni today in the press conference when he talks about that last play where Julian Love came in, it was a great pick six, or not pick six, excuse me, but a great interception, a well-played interception.
Yeah.
If you're not an Eagles fan, but like the idea of, we wanted to take a shot to get a defensive pass interference call. That's not, you don't draw up plays thinking, the refs got us.
The refs are going to help us.
No, that is not good coaching at all. And it really makes you think one of two things. A, either Sirianni has really regressed as a coach, and if that's how he's game planning, maybe he doesn't need to be a head coach anymore.
Yeah.
Or 2, he's protecting Jalen Hurts in some way.
Yeah.
That maybe the play call simply was, look, let's just get the chunk yards. We've got one of the best field goal kickers in the game. Literally, Kenny Gainwell sitting right there, 20 yards of nothing in front of him. They've got 2 timeouts. Everything is set up for this team to kick a game-tying field goal and head into overtime. Yep. But maybe Jalen just got antsy and said, look, I trust my guy. He's downfield. He can make the play. Again, I think it's one of those 2 things. If it was the first one, we're in trouble. That's all I got to say.
And that's fair.
Fantasy, Jalen Hurts is fine. He'll bounce back this week.
Yes. I mean, he barely needs to bounce back. It wasn't a great game, but 2 rushing touchdowns, correct?
Yeah, it was not a great passing game. He had 143 yards passing, I believe, and 2 interceptions. But again, 2 rushing touchdowns. And when most fantasy leagues value rushing touchdowns more than passing touchdowns, you're okay.
And then I think Craig just flexing on us at this point. Switched out Michael Pittman and Nico Collins for Cooper Kupp and Rasheed Rice. That's
how you do it, buddy.
I was going to say that's lineup building 101 right there. Congratulations. Pittman has me scared this week, Josh. That hit from DeMonte Casey obviously wasn't great. He's going to miss
I'll be surprised if Pittman plays.
So that's what I was going to say, Josh, is do we expect Michael Pittman out? Not that Atlanta is a great matchup for fantasy quarterbacks or wide receivers this season. So my question to you is, if Pittman plays, do you risk him? If Pittman's out, how do you feel about Josh Downs?
I was initially really excited. I looked at the matchups and I saw that the Falcons are pretty stingy to slot wide receivers.
Yep.
And I'm like, God damn it. I wanted to get excited here. Don't sign me up for freaking Alec Pierce against AJ Terrell, because that ain't happening. So then I'm like, all right, who's the 4th guy? Well, they just suspended Isaiah McKenzie. I literally cannot name another wide receiver on the Colts.
Yeah.
So that's hurtful. If Michael Pittman does not play, whoever is the running backs on this team, whoever ends up playing, which Jonathan Taylor is trending in the right direction.
Yeah.
That's the only part of this Colts offense that I want this week if Michael Pittman does not play.
And they use Taylor as a wide receiver a lot early on in the season. This could be a situation where Zach Moss, if he's healthy enough, or Trey Sermon, and I am blanking on the other kid's name, Tyler Goodson. You could see those guys playing more of a traditional running back with Jonathan Taylor out wide if he's healthy enough to come in and do that right away. So it could be a very, very interesting game there. That's for sure. Caesar has one for us, and that is Bears or 49ers defense. Also, is the Miami defense droppable? I'm going to answer the last part first. Yes, they are absolutely droppable.
You think the Miami defense is droppable?
Yeah. You don't?
Really?
Well, first of all,
they're the number 1 defense since week 12.
I was going to say, first of all, every defense is droppable. Let me be perfect.
All right.
Clear.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair.
However, I don't know that you're going to trust playing them against Dallas or Baltimore. Now, I will say the first part of this question, I'm going to tell you to start a defense versus Baltimore. So, if I have the 49ers defense, the Miami defense is droppable. I am not concerned about playing the Miami or the 49ers defense pretty much against any opponent. You may not get these ceiling weeks that you'd like, but I think the floor is going to be there. And Josh, you asked me a very similar question earlier today, and I was very much about sorry, I'm bringing up my rankings from Fantasy Pros, and I am the highest ranked person on the 49ers defense this week. So yes, I believe in the 49ers defense. But what I also like is they get the Washington Commanders next week. So I'm not worried about putting the Miami defense in the hands of my opponents. I believe the 49ers defense for this week and next week is a playable defense, Josh.
That's fair. That's 100% fair. I will agree on that one. I mean, Miami defense, they don't have obviously the best matchups, bring high-powered offense, Dallas this week. But again, we know how they are on the road. They have struggled on the road outside of 2 like blowout wins, one early in the season against the Giants, which again, it's the Giants. And then I'm blanking on the other road game that they actually played well, but like Dak played well in Philly, right? 374, 3 touchdowns, but they lost. But outside of that, he averages 218 yards passing on the road and just over 1 touchdown per game. Like in terms of fantasy purposes, Dak Prescott is not a great quarterback on the road this year. So that gives me hope that the Miami defense, which has played really well over the last 4 weeks, hope that they can slow down this, high-powered Dallas offense, regardless of whether Dallas needs to bounce back after the drubbing that Buffalo gave them. But next week, Miami travels to Baltimore, which Lamar Jackson has destroyed the Miami defense in years past. So, but again, I feel like if you feel like you can trust the 49ers defense this week against Baltimore, I feel like you shouldn't be scared against the Miami defense next week against Baltimore.
And you're not wrong, but if you have the 49ers defense, you definitely want to play them next week.
And that's the answer. Correct.
So, and then I'm just going to keep it with defense, and we're going to jump into some of the other questions after we do our show sheet a little bit. Woods Girl has Bears and KC defense. That is a true quandary because I have them, Josh, almost right next to. Oh, no, I don't. I'm way higher on Kansas City taking on Vegas on Monday. That is a 1:00 game on Christmas. I have Kansas City as my 4th ranked defense. The Bears, I'm just not ready to trust, Josh. And Arizona has been hit or miss. I do like for the Bears that it's in Chicago, but I have a Kansas City as my number 4 defense this week taking on the Raiders. I have the Bears as my number 13. So this would be Kansas City for me.
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about the Miami defense. Chicago's the number 2 defense right now.
Yep.
In over those same 4 weeks, like getting Montez Sweat, putting him into that lineup, they've played. It's been night and day from the beginning of the season. Like the defense 100%. Is finally starting to click. Jalen Johnson, you can tell he's playing for a new contract. Even the linebackers. Like, can I tell you how much Philly misses TJ Edwards right now?
Yeah.
Like, my God. He's been playing well. It seems like Tremaine Edmonds is finally starting to pick things back up.
Edmonds had a pick 6 or a fumble recovery 6 last week.
Fumble recovery for a touchdown, I believe. Yeah. So, and again, like the Bears don't have any tough matchups.
So the Bears have the Cardinals this week and the Falcons next week. So definitely solid matchups for the Bears. If I had, I wouldn't want to drop them. That's for sure. I'm not quite off the top of my head who Kansas City's week 17 is.
I can look that up.
So one thing I will say, obviously I have Kansas City ranked higher right now, and it's something I need to dig into. I always like to pick on the home team. The Bears
have Bengals.
Kansas City against the Bengals. Now, Jake Browning, take that for what it is. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, I was going to say balling. The one thing is I do like the home team, and the Bears have a more normal game this week. They have a Sunday at 4:00 game, Josh, whereas Kansas City is at home on Christmas Day, 1:00 on a Monday. It's a little bit of a weird game for NFL players.
Yeah,
but if I could pick on Aiden O'Connell, I'm going to pick on Aiden O'Connell, even if it is I apologize. Kansas City's at home too. I'm making a mountain out of a molehill. It's Kansas City for me. I'm talking myself in circles for the wrong information. So let's
good job, Rick. Good job.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on.
Blame it on the internet. It's okay.
Exactly. I got jumbled when the show started, and I've never recovered. That's what it comes down to. Guys, we're going to talk upside, downside. These are our upside plays of the week. We're going to get to the rest of your questions. If you've just now joined us for the first time, welcome. Congratulations on your semifinals. I can't imagine that you're searching out new fantasy shows in week 16 if you're not still in the playoffs.
But you know what? If you are, excuse me, hit that like and subscribe button. We are 5 away from 700.
Yeah, let's get us to 700. Let's get us to 700 before the show's gone. So I know there are 5 of you watching, at least right now. Go find 5 friends. I assume you're all already subscribed. Go find 5 friends and make them subscribe while the show's on so Josh can announce 700 at the end of the show. We are going to answer every single question you have in the chat. We're not going to miss anything. Don't you worry about it, but you're going to have to stick with us to get your answer. Upsides. Last week, Josh, I went 0-4-3. It was not pretty.
So you're okay.
Yeah. But hey, there's some good news in the downside. That puts me at 8-33-1 for the week. My upside plays this week are in the Tampa Bay Jacksonville game. Baker Mayfield and Trevor Lawrence combined for 50 fantasy points. Roschon Johnson is a top 25 running back versus Arizona. And every week I give you a player who's going to score 2 touchdowns, and that player never scores 2 touchdowns. This week, that is going to be Hunter Henry taking on the Denver Broncos. You're going to hear a lot about him coming up in the show. However, I want to talk about Baker and T-Law, Josh, because basically, I just looked at the matchup in this one. Both quarterbacks have went off. You actually addressed this on our Monday show last week or the week before, that Trevor Lawrence is playing well in the face of injury, and he's just coming out and playing damn good football, losing Christian Kirk, being hurt himself, Travis Etienne not taking a lot of pressure off of him, and he is still balling. The last 3 pocket passers against Jacksonville have averaged 322 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's what they're averaging, pocket passer guys. They've also averaged 30 fantasy points. So that takes 30 of my 50 off the board right now. I just need 20 from Trevor Lawrence. And we all know Tampa Bay is ready to give up in the passing game. Brock Purdy beat Tampa Bay for 333 yards and 32 fantasy points in week 11. Then Desmond Ridder, of all people, crossed 300 yards and 25 fantasy points 2 weeks ago. And then Jordan Love last week, 284 yards, 23 fantasy points. I think these two are going to combine for 50, Josh. I think this is going to be the game of the week. Tampa Bay, Jacksonville, Battle of Florida, battle of probably everybody you know down there in Florida right now in their fandom. So
I was just thinking, I'm like, yeah, the Battle of Florida. Like it's been a while since not 1, not 2, but all 3 Florida teams have really looked great. Like,
yeah,
Miami's leading the division. Jacksonville right now is hanging on by a thread. Tampa, they're tied for the division lead with the Saints. I mean, we've seen Tampa be great. This whole Baker Mayfield thing has really been a shock. Like, you get these bad Baker games on occasion, but lately he's really been playing well, and I can see it.
Yeah, I was nervous early on in that Green Bay game because he had that sack strip fumble right there on like the 5-yard line, and I'm like, oh, Baker, don't turn into Cleveland Baker. That's not what we need right now. We need first game with the Rams Baker.
Yeah.
Come on,
that's like, it's in Tampa. Like, the weather around here is going to be great. Like, it's been cold all week, but it's supposed to get nice and sunny this weekend. So, we'll have some really good weather games. And obviously these are Florida teams. They're used to playing in bright, shiny, sun-filled weather. So I think, yeah, I could definitely see this being like a 34-31 game.
I'm going to call it right now, Josh. This is going to be a Kelly Singh special game. Kelly, my co-host on our DFS show, adores fantasy tight ends. Neither one of these teams can cover a tight end. Evan Ingram, K-Dot, and might both go off in this game. So,
and you know what? Has there ever been a quieter tight end 5 season than Evan Ingram is having right now?
His season last year, but then again, that all took place in the last 4 weeks. So.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, he's been consistently good all season. And when you look at everybody else that's ahead of him, like, Kelce tilts technically the tight end 1 in points per game, and we know how up and down he's been all season.
So he's just been carried by the beginning of the season.
Kincaid. There's been a lot of really good tight ends, and here's Evan Ingram just being all steady, consistent, and nobody's freaking talking about him.
Yeah.
It's strange to me.
Well, and especially in a season where they got Calvin Ridley back, and everybody assumed it was going to be Evan Ingram who lost the targets. I think it helps that Zay Jones has been out. And then the immediate moment that Kirk steps out, Zay Jones is ready to come back. So he hasn't had to deal with 3 wide receivers. And I think that's really benefited Evan Ingram in this entire situation.
I agree. I like it.
Josh, as mentioned, you went 0-3 last week. You're just a singular game behind me, 7-34-1 on the season. You are 0-1 in your bonus picks. Now, guys, you're going to hear 0-3 a lot. We try to get wild with these upside picks. Basically, we just want to talk these guys up, but we're making wild predictions so that when we are right, we can come on here and be like, I told you.
In fairness, my Bijan Robinson pick just absolutely flamed out. So I'll own that one as a big L because fuck Arthur Smith. So
yeah, and at this point, fuck Bijan Robinson because I'm out.
How dare you fumble and cost your fantasy managers, right? Like, come on.
Because I'm out of a lot of playoffs, and I'm not saying it's just because of Bijan Robinson. Josh, I didn't get a chance to tell you on Monday. I didn't realize it. In a league, we got this question 400 times on Monday. Travis Kelce versus Trey McBride. If I had started McBride in a league, I'd be alive in one more playoffs where I benched him for Travis Kelce because I stuck with my man, and it didn't work out real well.
Yeah. That's
I know you suffered a similar fate, so but
as you're not wrong. At the hands of both Kelce and Bijan.
Yeah, you had them both in the lineup. Josh is taking the new wonder kid, James Cook, 20 plus fantasy points at the Los Angeles Chargers. Jared Goff, top 10 at Minnesota, and Boston Scott, the giant killer, scores a touchdown against the Giants. So we know Josh has one next week. Which one of these are you going to tell me about?
So I'm going to first address the Boston Scott. This is why I pointed out the Landon Dickerson injury.
Okay.
This is a starting guard on one of the best offensive lines in football. Nick Sirianni, he's a player's coach. He knows Boston Scott scores against the Giants. How many times do you think DeAndre Swift falls at the 1 yard line and instead of lining up for the brotherly shove, he just pitches it to Boston Scott? Let's be real here. I'm just saying. But whatever the anytime touchdown bet on Boston Scott is, bet it. It is money in the bank. Straight up. But we're going to talk about James Cook because homeboy went off last week. Scored over 30 fantasy points and was the RB2 on the week. That is how fantastic Christian McCaffrey is. But since Ken Dorsey was fired, that was 4 weeks ago, over the last 4 weeks, James Cook has averaged 25.7 fantasy points per game. He is the RB2 in points per game. He is closing in on 1,000 rushing yards on the season. Yes, James Cook, who is just a scat back by so many other fantasy pundits out there when he was drafted last year and said, you shouldn't spend a first-round rookie pick on him. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Paid heavy dividends for me this year in all my dynasty drafts.
Yes,
but
he did.
The best part about this, not just so because Joe Brady has been utilizing James Cook and the running game in Buffalo, but their opponent this week, the Los Angeles Chargers, who have one of the worst defenses in the NFL. And since week 10, they allow the second most fantasy points to running backs. They are a team in flux. They have no fucking idea what they're doing. They can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They just fired their head coach, who is more of a defensive coordinator. That's probably why he was fired. And now their interim head coach is their linebackers coach. If he's focusing on being a CEO, he's not coaching up the linebackers to stop James Cook.
Not coaching up the linebackers. He already wasn't coaching.
Correct. Correct. James Cook, baby. Line it up.
No, I think it's an absolutely great pick. I think we're in a situation where I had made the article that we may not see 63 points again. We may see 63 points again. I don't know that a team has given up 126 points in 2 weeks, but that could be the situation.
That'd be a stat to look up.
Yeah. So yeah, get those stats on deck. You can become Josh, you've had some recent Twitter success. You need to have these things ready for when it happens, because I think Buffalo is going to roll over the Chargers. That is a Saturday game as well. So that's again another weird.
Yeah, that's I think only on Peacock. So let me tell you, if you do not have Peacock, this is not the reason to go out and buy their streaming service. Let me tell you to watch.
However, if you sign up, I think they give you $5 a month for the first month if you have like T-Mobile.
Look, if you can pay me to watch the Chargers on Peacock, I'm all about it.
Well, hold on though. I believe Peacock is the only place you can watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine currently. And if you have not seen Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or if you need to watch it again, that's worth the price of admission. That is actually why we signed back up for Peacock when it left Hulu. We wanted to keep watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine. That's a favorite show of ours. So Peacock, if you want to sponsor us, we will more than happily take your money, pitch your fucking service every single week. Joe, 0-3 last week, though, leads the win-loss for all of us here. 11-30-1. He is 1-0 on his bonus picks. And Joe, I wanted to say he was being a little facetious, Josh, but he's not, because this is how this show goes. So Joe, first of all, is in the toilet bowl and trying to make sure he doesn't lose. So his opponent in the toilet bowl.
If I have to guess, this is probably the league that does like the last place punishment. Because I think it was last year or 2 years ago when he had to do the Waffle House, the diner punishment thing. So that's probably what I'm guessing. Because he does note that his last 3 losses have come from a combined less than 3 fantasy points.
How insane is that? Because that means none of them could have been more than a point, really. So, or two very small and one normal loss. But regardless, Joe has went the route of he is going to say all of these players are going to do great because his opponent has them. So he is hoping that the jinx is real. And with this face saying someone's going to do good, I think the jinx is real, Josh. Russell Wilson is going to be top 10 against New England. Your guy, Deontay Johnson, is going to score a touchdown. And I love that Deontay Johnson scoring a touchdown qualifies as an upside, but he's not wrong.
But you know what? I mean, considering he went, close to 600 days, it feels like, without scoring a touchdown, and then has scored like 4 in his last 5 games or something like that. Yeah, I'm all about it. I like it.
And then Gus Bus with the loss of Keaton Mitchell, top 15 versus San Francisco. And Josh, I noticed San Francisco has been getting beat up by some running backs. I'm going to pull those stats up there, but do any of these jump out at you?
Not particularly. I mean, Russ against New England, that's just Joe being a Patriots fan at this point. He knows his team sucks and he's just banking on that top 2 pick. And I'm going to laugh so hard when they end up drafting Drake May and then Joe going on his whole North Carolina quarterback suck rant, and the same way that he goes against Alabama quarterbacks. And he's just going to say, oh, well, Drake May is just another Mitch Trubisky because he's helmet scouting. And I'm like, you know what? You're going to sign yourself up for this pain. So have fun with it.
So the Niners, I may have overstepped my bounds a little bit saying they've been getting beat up by running backs, but they've had some interesting games since week 8. Week 8, Joe Mixon beats them for 87 yards and a touchdown. Also caught 3 balls in that game, 20 fantasy points. They did slow down Travis Etienne. Rachaad White found the end zone against them, but also caught 6 balls, 17 fantasy points. That was one of Zach Charbonnet's early starts. 47 yards isn't terrible, but didn't do enough for fantasy. Neither did any Philadelphia running back. And then Zach Charbonnet went again for 44 yards on them just 2 weeks ago. However, this past week, in what could be considered garbage time, though James Conner's touchdown was early in that game, they allowed 2 very long touchdowns. Conner's was pretty long, if I remember correctly, and DeMercado's was like, it was like a 57
yarder.
Yeah, exactly. So, he finished with 64. So unless he was negative, it was probably 60 yards. They both scored long touchdowns, and 18 points for Conner, 14 points for DeMercado. I don't think we look at this 49ers defense, and obviously I've been talking them up as a team play, but they've been getting beat up by some wide receivers, as we've noted. Some running backs can find the end zone too. And if Gus Edwards is going to handle all the work there, Josh, it could be very interesting. We'll see how.
Well, and of course, what helps Baltimore's case is that they have, any defense has to account for Lamar Jackson getting outside the pocket and taking off with his legs, right? So you can't really crowd the box to stop the run at that point, because you do that, you leave yourself open to naked boots and things of that nature, where Lamar Jackson can do what Lamar Jackson does best. But one thing that he's done really well is sit in the pocket and be patient. I mean, we saw it on the big time throw down towards the end of the game to Isaiah Likely. Old Lamar Jackson from even last year, 2-3 years ago, would have taken off and ran that. And he said, you know what? I'm going to throw it up. My guy's going to go get it. And he got it. And Likely made a killer play going up and getting that football. But that to me is what will help Gus Edwards, because he does not catch passes. And with Keaton Mitchell out, those pass catching duties are now going to fall to Justice Hill. Yep. So unless you're telling me that Gus Edwards falls into the end zone twice, him being a top 15 pick, I just don't see it.
There you go.
Even if what you're ultimately trying to do is jinx your opponent here.
I was going to say that's his goal here. So, all right, we're going to dive back into some questions. And Josh, I think this is the question on everyone's mind. I've already, given him the middle finger salute, but are we going to start Bijan Robinson this week? I have one team that survived with Bijan Robinson in the lineup. That is a team where I have David Montgomery, Bijan Robinson, Rachaad White. As of this moment, because David Montgomery has gotten sketchy work, much has Bijan Robinson, due to matchups, I am going to play Robinson against the Colts and get Rachaad White in my lineup over David Montgomery, because Rachaad White deserves a lineup spot in my semifinal lineup. But it is so hard to trust. And then what is Arthur Smith going to do with the news that he's unemployed in less than a month? Is he just going to say, well, then I'm going to sabotage this team? I certainly hope not. He wants a job after this. So
I have one of my dynasty teams that advanced that has Bijan Robinson on the team. I am starting Bijan Robinson because I know that the moment that I sit him is the moment that he explodes for 30 points. And I would so much rather lose with him in my lineup than lose with him on my bench. It truly is that simple.
So you feel like, and God, do I hate saying this because I said it about Austin Eckler a few weeks ago. You feel like he is due for a bounce back game. And if you're going to bounce back, it's going to be at home against a Colts leaky rush defense. But I'm not going to tell you it's not terrifying, Caesar. And I'm also going to say a big part of this question is, what are your other options?
And that's 100% true. Because if you spend an early draft pick on Bijan Robinson, unless you just hit pay dirt on waiver wire, you probably don't have very many other options.
Yeah. Right now, this is going to sound insane, but my first set of rankings sometimes sound insane. I have Bijan Robinson as my RB18. So he is a RB2, but the question is, who are you going to play over him? And like right now, I have Jonathan Taylor ranked over him. So there's some things I need to look at. But again, it's a tough situation, and your options are going to play into this. Josh, Justin Fields or Jake Browning? I think this is going to be the kind of question we're going to see a lot this week. I think we're going to see it a lot on our Start Sit show because we mentioned this, Josh, you pointed out that none of the top 12 drafted quarterbacks finished in the top 12 this past week. I pointed out that all 5 of my stream of the week quarterbacks absolutely smashed last week. These, and I hate to use this term, but lesser quarterbacks are outperforming these studs. But a rule of thumb for the fantasy playoffs for a long time, Josh, has been start your studs. So you have Jake Browning at Pittsburgh taking on a division rival on the road. You have Justin Fields at home against a beatable Arizona defense.
I mean, at the end of the day, what really has Justin Fields done in fantasy over the last month? Like we always talk about, oh, he's got the upside with his legs, right? He's really not doing much else. Like he's throwing for 129 yards, 140 yards, 1 touchdown maybe.
Yeah.
But then maybe gets like 30 or 40 on the ground. It's not like the 70 or 80 or 130 that he was getting last year. It's almost like he's trying to keep himself from running to try to convince the team that he can win games as a passer so they don't trade him for the presumed number 1 overall pick. That, you know what I mean? Like that to me is what that's what I'm looking at. Because that's the way that it appears to me. Like he wants to stay in Chicago. He wants the franchise to believe in him. And I get that. If I was a player, I'd want the team to believe in myself too. But don't overthink it. Don't get yourself in, just do what comes natural. And this was the issue to me in the beginning part of the season when Getsy was, galaxy braining all of these plays that were not working towards Justin Fields' strengths. And we were getting a lot of really inconsistent play. Right now, the Bears are winning games in spite of Justin Fields. They're not winning because of Justin Fields.
Indeed. That defense, the number 2 fantasy defense over the last
Exactly.
game.
They're making plays, and Montez Sweat right now is the MVP of this Bears team. Like he has right now, he leads not 1 but 2 teams in sacks in the NFL.
Holy shit, what a stat.
He has the most sacks on the Commanders right now. And he doesn't even play for the Commanders. Yeah.
Are the Bears not the case study for both the worst use of a second round pick and maybe the best use of a second round pick over the last 2 seasons?
Basically. Yeah. This one they actually got right. Montez Sweat's good. Chase Claypool was never good. That's the difference. Okay.
Chase Claypool ain't playing when Miami's wide receivers are hurt.
Exactly. Precisely. So for me, the answer to this question is Jake Browning. Because he's actually doing it.
I say I'm going to disagree. I think Pittsburgh is a tougher matchup. I'm going to take Justin Fields to set it right against the Cardinals.
They though? Minka Fitzpatrick is out and DeMonte Casey suspended. There's the back end of their secondary.
Now the whole secondary is dead. So if Cincinnati can protect Browning, I'm still going to take Fields, but I don't see anything wrong with starting Jake Browning and then just kind of co-signing. Caesar says he is starting Fields and more and just praying. So I would say, Woods girl, you should be praying as well to whatever God you believe in or the fantasy gods. Somebody is going to need to help you in this matchup.
Yep.
All right. What is this? Search. I'm calling you Search because you got
Search
a whole bunch of stuff. Search and kill. Okay, fantastic. Good thing we're not monetized, so we don't have to worry about getting demonetized. They need a wide receiver. They got Chris Godwin, Jordan Addison, who smashed last week, Chris Olave, who should play, and then Christian Watson, who was out last week after a major game before that. We're picking one wide receiver of this group, Josh.
I really do like Chris Godwin this week. I think him finally busting out this past week and doing so, playing more out of the slot, which that's been my whole argument with Chris Godwin. It's been they're not utilizing him really out of the slot, and that's where he excels the most.
Yeah.
They're trying to like pigeonhole him outside, and that's been the issue because he's not an outside threat. He's an inside option. Well, he did the damn thing this past week, and a lot of it was from the slot. So if Tampa Bay keeps that same game plan and keeps Chris Godwin out of the slot, I think you're going to get a really good game out of a matchup that really benefits Baker and the Bucs offense, which should then benefit Godwin. I think to me, the safest play is probably Addison in what should be a really high powered game. One of the things that I pulled up with Jared Goff, while he's typically not great on the road, in domes, he has 21 touchdowns to 6 interceptions on the season. He plays really well in domes. Obviously, Minnesota's in a dome. So I don't think you're going to have a lot of the same road woes with the Detroit offense this week. And that's going to keep Minnesota in much more of a shootout range. And that's going to benefit Addison. So even if Olave plays, I don't love it. I think it's just a bad matchup. I would rank them Addison, Godwin, Olave, and then Watson.
I'm close with you. I would put Godwin first. I'm going to choose Godwin here for all the reasons you said. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think Tampa Bay is going to lean on that. If Olave were healthy, it would be Olave. We've seen a lot of good things Olave over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and I would like to see that continue. However, he is hurt coming into a short week game. It's not worth it to me. I'm not going to run that risk in the semifinals of the fantasy playoffs. Christian Watson is the one I'm not picking in this game, simply because Carolina, for whatever reason, and maybe it's just because everybody can run on them, people don't throw on them very well. And so I'm not going to gamble on a good defense that has slowed down wide receivers, and he's not just the only wide receiver there. They're throwing to the tight end. They have 2 other good wide receivers. He's not getting enough of the work to guarantee it. For me, Chris Godwin is, and that's who I'm going to lean on, though. I do like the upside of Addison, and it's a really interesting pick, but I'm going to stick with Chris Godwin in that matchup. Tight end. Haven't heard this name in a while, mainly because he just came off the IR. Darren Waller versus Jake Ferguson. Waller taking on your Eagles and Ferguson at Miami.
I don't really think the answer is ever Darren Waller right now. I mean, and Philly gets killed by tight ends. So this really is set up to be a great Darren Waller game. And Miami has played really well against tight ends. But to me, it's the sheer target volume that benefits Jake Ferguson in this matchup. So I'm going to stick with the guy that's actually been reliable all season, and that's Ferguson.
And that's exactly where I was standing. And I'm going to pick the game that I think has a much better chance of being a high-scoring game. My expectations for that Eagles-Giants game can't be all that great. It just wouldn't make sense. And Ferguson, even last week in an ugly game, still managed 8 targets, 6 catches. He only turned those 6 catches into 44 yards. Whereas, yes, Miami should be the better defense, should be the better matchup, but it should also be the better scoring game for fantasy football purposes. So I'm going to take Jake Ferguson in that one. And plus, he has like.
Yeah. And here's the thing too, with the Philly defense, everybody wants to shit on Matt Patricia for, ultimately what transpired in that final drive with Drew Lock coming back and winning that game for Seattle. Up until that drive, Matt Patricia called a fantastic game and truly held the Seattle offense in check. Yeah. Outside of the, the broken tackle, touchdown run from Kenneth Walker, who truly is just an absolutely fantastic running back. He called a great game. But we see this all the time with defensive coordinators. They get into this whole prevent, back up and play the short game and dare you to go long. And even good defensive coordinators fall into that. I obviously have always been very skeptical on Matt Patricia. I think he's really just kind of an extension of Belichick, but to a much lesser degree, and only does well when he has Belichick in his ear. But I thought he called a great game, and it really isn't his fault that James Bradbury sucks.
Or that JSN is actually good.
Yeah. So, hats off to Patricia, because I thought he called a great game. Obviously, Seattle doesn't use tight ends the way that the Giants probably will use Darren Waller. Yeah. But Seattle tight ends really didn't do much either. So,
Yep.
Their focus honestly will probably be to take out Saquon, which our run defense has, been suspect the last month or so. But Waller will still be a focus, and they trot him out more so like a wide receiver than anything. So if one of our rookies get on him, Eli Ricks or Kaylee Ringo, who both have played fantastic, I think they saw 6 targets combined against Seattle, didn't give up a single catch.
So it's obviously something where they can step up and actually do their job. I think Noah Fant had 17 yards in that game. So
there you go.
And we're just going to keep it on the tight ends real quick. Jason W wants to know Isaiah Likely versus Jake Ferguson. Now, we just spoke Jake Ferguson's praises. However, Jake Ferguson still falls at tight end 11 for me against Miami. I'm going to take Likely versus San Francisco. Obviously, Lamar Jackson is loving him, loving the tight end position. And I think Likely is going to find ways to find the open space on the field and get found by Lamar Jackson. That's something he has done very well over the last 2 games as a starter.
Yeah, I know Joe would lean into Fred Warner being the guy that typically covers tight ends and is one of the best cover linebackers, if not the best cover linebackers in the NFL. So I think that in and of itself will kind of downgrade Likely. But again, like the way that Baltimore's wide receivers have looked, none of them are CD Lamb. So I think that pushes Likely forward, in my opinion, in the pecking order of pass attempts in the Baltimore offense. So I'm fine going with Likely. Neither of these guys have great matchups. Miami's defense, like we've talked about, they've played really well. They cover the tight ends really well. Same thing with San Francisco. But right now, you can't sit the hot streak that is Isaiah Likely.
Sorry, the last comment just completely threw me off. Someone called the cooking channel.
Zach.
The NFL has a Baker problem. I love it. All right, we're going to get into our downsides. One last question, Josh. This one's been waiting for a little while. 2 wide receivers and a flex. This is a non-PPR league, a non-peeper. Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave, Jackson Smith-Njiba, Jaylen Warren, and Ty Chandler. So we got, 2 running backs here that we can choose, or we could go 3 wide receivers. This is a standard non-PPR league, so that tends to give the running backs a little bit more value, Josh. Cooper Kupp and Chris Olave facing each other in the Thursday game, and Jalen Waddle taking on Dallas. However, we do not know Tyreek Hill's status yet to know if Waddle could become an immense value. Who you got in this game?
I'm sitting Ty Chandler out of this. That's for sure.
I know you would.
Detroit has played really well against running backs, especially on the ground. So Ty Chandler, if he's going to provide any value, it's going to be out of the passing game, which obviously doesn't play much into your standard scoring thought process. Jaylen Warren, I'm fine putting him in the flex. In terms of wide receivers, Cooper Kupp is a gimme. I think I was going to say Olave. I think Waddle is probably the safest option, but I feel like you're kind of going safe with the flex with Warren. So I might chase the upside with Olave on Thursday night, just seeing the target volume and potential for garbage time. Who does Seattle play this week? Seattle plays
Tennessee.
Okay. If Jaxon was higher on the pecking order of targets, I would have no problem charting him out because that is a fantastic matchup and he's likely to get Geno Smith back this week. But I'm going to go with Waddle over Olave. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play it safe there. Kupp, Waddle, Jaylen Warren. I think the Dolphins are really wanting to kind of wait it out with Tyreek Hill. Yes, I think they need him, but even if he plays, I think they'll almost in a way kind of use him more as a decoy and just kind of let Waddle do his thing. And for as great as Stephon Gilmore has played this year, he ain't keeping up with Jalen Waddle.
Nope.
That man's way too fast.
Jalen Waddle got that pep in his step, or that Waddle in his step right now. So
yep.
I think we can expect a good week. For all the reasons Josh said, I'm actually going to go Kupp, Waddle, Olave. Kupp, Waddle, Olave. I'm going to stay away from the running backs. Both of these guys hit me as passing down backs. I'm looking for the 3 guys most likely to score a touchdown. That's Cooper Kupp, that's Jalen Waddle, and that's even Chris Olave. One thing I would mention is you're going to have to put one of these guys, a Thursday player, in your flex, which is going to take a little flexibility away from you, unfortunately. But those are the guys I would go with, assuming Olave gets a clean bill of health tomorrow. Obviously, watch those practice reports. I would pivot to Warren over JSN as well. So I do somewhat agree with Josh, but I would start with the 3 stud wide receivers and go from there. Downsides. These are the folks that we don't think are going to have a very good week this week. Last week, Josh, I went 3-0. 19-23 on the season, taking a commanding lead in this contest. My picks this week are Travis Kelce, not top 5 versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Dallas Goedert, not.
I had a heart attack reading that, by the way.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a second. Ryan's off the Travis Kelce bandwagon.
Kelce was my downside last week as well because of the New England Patriots thing. However, this week, putting it bluntly, and this is what I'm going to talk about, I just love so many other tight ends, which is ridiculous. Dallas Goedert, not 10 fantasy points at home against the Giants. And every week I tell you a guy who's not going to score a touchdown, and I'm actually pretty good at this. It's like 50-50 on the season. No touchdowns for Mr. Cole Kmet. Part of me didn't want to make him on my list, but then part of me is like, it's been 16 weeks, and I haven't.
I know we haven't really had a chance to shit on Cole Kmet much.
Exactly. So fuck you, Cole Kmet. And I think he's gonna have a terrible week. He scored last week. Arizona's been pretty good against the tight end. So my issue, Josh, with Travis Kelce is not just Travis Kelce. My issue is there are so many fun tight end matchups this week. And what I wrote down was, first and foremost, we talked about this on Monday. Travis Kelce does not look right. I understand the Patriots take away your best weapon. The Patriots are good against tight ends. I watched that game. I have watched Travis Kelce intently as a huge fan and someone who has him on so many fantasy rosters over the last few years. That game against the Patriots, he did not look like Travis Kelce. You and I think possibly fighting through an injury. At the very least, he's a 34-year-old man who looks tired as fuck. He could still have a decent week. He's beat up on the Raiders before. However, and this I mentioned, there are eight Josh tight ends that I think could have a bigger week than Travis Kelce. Right now, he slots in as my tight end 5, even though I'm telling you he's not going to finish top 5. But listen to these names in these matchups. Sam Laporta taking on Minnesota. Minnesota can be beat by tight ends. TJ Hawkinson, revenge game against the Detroit Lions. Trey McBride against Chicago should probably be my tight end 1 this week. He's going to feast. David Njoku has been on fire with Joe Flacco. He's taking on Houston. Evan Ingram, as I mentioned, Tampa Bay cannot cover the tight end. Hunter Henry, who is my stream of the week, spoiler alert, is probably going to score 2 touchdowns this week against a terrible Denver defense. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. And then we've talked about him, Isaiah Likely, San Francisco, Dalton Kincaid against the Chargers. We brought up Cade Otton. I'm going with more than 8 names. These are guys who could easily have a better week than Kelce, who only put up like 12 fantasy points, I think, against the Raiders last time they faced each other. It was not a very good matchup. The Raiders have not allowed a tight end touchdown since week 8, and that includes that game against Kelce.
Kelce only has 5 touchdowns on the season.
Yeah.
This is a big, for as good as he's been statistically, he's also not been great because we're so accustomed to this, godlike explosions week in and week out, and he's just not doing it this year.
Nope. He did it early on, and he did it right after Taylor. He had those back-to-back touchdown games or something like that, or at least 100-yard games mixed with touchdown games. But the energy has been sucked out of Travis Kelce right now. And take that for what it is. I just don't see it as another big week against the Raiders. And it's also a week where the way they've been throwing to their running backs, they may not need him. Jerry McKinnon, CEH, both look good last week. Maybe they get Pacheco back this week. And obviously Noah Gray, super involved last week. Actually had more catches, I believe. And
because they don't have any wide receivers outside of Rashee Rice to trust.
Yeah. Rashee Rice and Justin Watson. That's the only people Patrick Mahomes will throw to. But yeah, Josh, I think it's going to be a rough week for tight ends. For Travis Kelce, because it's going to be a good week for tight ends. And so that's just my thought process there. I'm not saying bench Travis Kelce, unless you manage to be in a situation similar to Josh and I, where you have Trey McBride and Travis Kelce, or Evan Ingram and Travis Kelce, David Njoku and Travis Kelce. I would start these guys over Travis Kelce this week on teams where I have Travis Kelce. Josh, 0-2-1 last week. What was your tie?
Good question. It
my bad, buddy.
was somebody that was Brian Robinson.
That's right. B-Rob missed the game. Okay.
Yeah.
Giving you 15 wins on the season, putting you, I think it was 4 behind me. Yeah, 4 behind me. 1-0 on your bonus picks this season. You have Dak Prescott under 15 fantasy points, going back to questions earlier in the show. Ty Chandler under 11 fantasy points, going back to questions early on in the show. And Jerome Ford, someone who's been kind of hit or miss lately, kind of boring. Fewer than 10 fantasy points against Houston. But I think you're going to have to talk about Dak, because I think most folks, just like we were last week, we're expecting a high-scoring game against Miami, and you don't know that Dak is going to survive.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, Dak is averaging on the road in 7 games this year, 216 passing yards per game. Like, that's basically 8 and change in terms of fantasy points. And if he's not getting anything else in terms of touchdowns, because he only has 8 touchdowns in 7 games, where are the fantasy points coming from? Because he's not like, Josh Allen or
I was just
Jalen
saying, we're not
Hurts,
seeing the
where
rushing upside.
He puts up a ton of rushing yards and touchdowns in that department. So on the road, Dak's just not it. Like, they tend to lean on the running game, or they get blown out in games a la San Francisco and Buffalo. But the determining factor here for me was, again, the opponent. We've talked about how good the Miami defense has been the last 4 weeks. But since Jalen Ramsey came back from injury in week 8, they allow the 4th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks.
Wow.
They've completely transformed from a defensive perspective, and they limit how much production quarterbacks put up against them. And I know a lot of that was the amount of pressure that they're bringing on the edges, and losing Jalen Phillips has not been great for them. But let's not sleep on Andrew Van Ginkel. Dude's come in and he gets after the quarterback.
And Van Ginkel playing better has opened up lanes for Bradley Chubb, which we saw last week in just a flat-out monster game from him.
Yep, and they get a ton of pressure inside from Sealer and Christian Wilkins. Like, this is a really good defense. And I know a lot of people tend to think that Vic Fangio's style of defensive play is kind of archaic and sort of making its way out in the NFL, but this is kind of the difference between the knockoffs and the real thing. The real thing knows how to play still. So, I think Dak scores under the 15 because, again, that's basically 225 and a touchdown.
Which you could easily see him come away in this game. Certainly came away with far worse than that.
Yeah. So I'm all on board that. But I do want to address the Jerome Ford thing really quick.
Yeah, caught me by surprise there. Not a name we talked about.
Well, part of it is because I'm a little jaded because I started Jerome Ford over James Cook in one league where I could very much use those additional fantasy points. But I was going through and I was looking at it. Since week 6, Jerome Ford has only 2 games where he has scored under 11 fantasy points. So he's been moderately consistent.
Good floor.
He's a very good floor, 100%. But over that same time span, he's only scored 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
Also, during that same time span, over the course of the season, he only has 5 games where he's rushed for more than 65 yards. So what does that tell you? A lot of it comes in the passing game, right?
Yeah.
That's where his floor is. And Houston, since week 12, they allow the 10th fewest fantasy points to running backs, and they allow about 6 receptions for 49 yards per game. So that's right around that 10, 11 fantasy point mark on average, just from a receiving perspective. They also allow 2.6 yards per carry. So if Jerome Ford's not getting anything on the ground, it's got to be in the air. So if they can't get the running game going, Flacco is going to sling it, but I'm not 100% convinced he's throwing it to Jerome Ford.
No, he's throwing it to Amari Cooper and David Njoku.
And Amari Cooper, correct. So that's my Jerome Ford take this week.
No, I think it's a good take. It's something I pointed out in our waiver article a few weeks ago. Don't look at this team and think Kareem Hunt is the passing down back. That has not been the situation. Kareem Hunt has transformed into the short yardage back for the Cleveland Browns, and Jerome Ford is the passing down back. So Josh is absolutely right. There's going to be a running back to fall into the end zone in this game. It's far more likely to be Kareem Hunt than it is to be Jerome Ford. Folks, we see a couple of new names in the chat. We are not ignoring you. We are going to get to questions literally here in just a second after I announce Joe's picks, which Joe stuck with the same exact method for his downside picks. Joe went 0-3 last week, tying him with Josh 15-27 on the year. However, as he tried to jinx his opponent by giving him all great upsides, he is trying to jinx his own team by calling them the downside picks this week. He's in the toilet bowl. He does not want another punishment. He is trying to reverse jinx these 3 players. Puka Nacua will not be a top 10 wide receiver versus New Orleans. Bijan Robinson outside of the top 3.
That one I actually think will hit.
I did not read these ahead of time. And Justin Fields fewer than 25. Really, Joe? Yes, Justin Fields fewer than 25 fantasy points.
He's trying to stack the deck and up his record. That's what it looks like more than anything.
Yeah, I didn't read these. Bijan Robinson outside the top 3. You can't give him a rank that is higher than the fantasy points he had this season.
I'm going to laugh my ass off when he finishes as the RB2 this week.
I certainly won't complain. I don't think we really need to talk about these. We talked about Fields earlier in the show.
I will say the only one of these that I actually am like, okay, I can I think maybe this has an opportunity to hit is in terms of hit, like be a loss for Joe is Puka outside the top 10. It seems to be like Puka or Cooper Kupp lately. It hasn't really been both of them, right? Like last week was the big Cooper Kupp game. Puka was fine, 5 for 50, not great for fantasy, but good in real life. If Marshawn Lattimore sees a lot of Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford may look the other direction. I think that benefits Puka Nacua there.
Very much so. Caesar, if you warn me that there are children in the room earlier in the show, I will do my best to be much cleaner than I normally am. I don't think I've actually been that bad this show, but let us know early. And welcome to the newest woman of fantasy football, daughter of Caesar.
Love it.
Happy to have you. Josh, I'm sorry to do this to you. Woods Girl has a kicker question.
Oh.
Ka'imi Fairbairn at home in a dome against the Cleveland Browns, or Tyler Bass on the road in a home game, because we know how that works, in Los Angeles against the Chargers. Chargers don't have home games. So Buffalo in their new home of Los Angeles, Ka'imi Fairbairn at home against the Browns. Josh, do you have an opinion? I know this is not your favorite thing to do.
My opinion is let me pull up Linda's kicker ranking. So give me a second.
So I'm going to give you a second to pull that up, and I'm going to talk about my rankings. I'm going to go with Tyler Bass here. We just saw the team put up 63 points against the Chargers. Buffalo is fighting for a playoff spot. They're fighting technically to win their division. I think they are going to come out and smack Los Angeles. I think Tyler Bass's ceiling is 9 extra points here. And if it's 5 extra points and 2 field goals, or even 5 extra points and 1 field goal, it's going to work out well. Could be a great game for Ka'imi Fairbairn, but if we're not dealing with CJ Stroud and possibly not dealing with Nico Collins, even an injured Browns defense should be able to slow the Houston offense down enough where I'm not really sold on Ka'imi Fairbairn. And when I tell you I'm not sold, he is still my kicker 6 this week. However, Tyler Bass is my kicker 3. Give me the high-scoring game. Good weather in Los Angeles. I'm going with Tyler Bass, Josh.
Yeah, Linda has Tyler Bass as her kicker 1, so Tyler Bass it is.
There you go. And Linda is far smarter than me. She is at Lindellians on Twitter, does the kicker rankings for Matthew Berry's Fantasy Life newsletter. So take her advice for sure. But if you ever just need a quick bad advice, you can go check my Fantasy Pros rankings. I do rank kickers every single week. Search and kill. Can we start Jahmyr Gibbs, Najee Harris, or Ty Chandler in the flex? I think it's Jahmyr Gibbs with no problem whatsoever here, right? So,
yeah, you're 1,000% starting Jahmyr Gibbs. Like we've been saying this for a few weeks. Raheem Mostert doesn't belong in start sit questions. Jahmyr Gibbs doesn't belong in start sit.
That is his backfield now.
Yeah,
he's the captain now.
Yep.
And Aaron,
Najee right now shouldn't even be rostered. Fucking 0.3 fantasy points last week. Get the fuck out of here.
Inefficient running back. Najee needs a change of scenery, and I hope it works out for him because it ain't working out for him in Pittsburgh. Jake Browning versus Taylor Heinicke. We're very pro Jake Browning on this show. We used to be very pro Taylor Heinicke. However, Atlanta, Indianapolis, I don't know how well we really love that game. What are your thoughts here, Josh? Because Jake Browning, I mentioned, could be a tougher matchup, but then you mentioned most of Pittsburgh secondary won't be playing this game.
Yeah, I'm going Jake Browning. This is pretty easy for me. There's nothing I like about Taylor Heinicke. Not a damn thing.
Good Lord. As a person, fuck you, Taylor Heinicke. Sorry, Caesar's daughter. I didn't mean to say that. But no, it's Jake Browning. Taylor Heinicke is a desperation play, and you are not in desperation if you have Taylor Heinicke on your roster. If you have Jake Browning.
I get it if maybe it's like a super flex and you're trying to put in that QB2, but yeah, no, this is Jake Browning. And just look at the success, like the recent success, like take the matchup out of it. Like Taylor Heinicke's been on the bench. Why? Because he's not good. Yeah. He came in and started for Desmond Ridder. Didn't do great. They pivoted back to Desmond Ridder because, again, Taylor Heinicke ain't it. Jake Browning has come in. He's 3-1, 4-1 as a starter for the Bengals this year and has played phenomenally well. Even without Jamar Chase, he's throwing it up to T. Higgins, and T. Higgins is balling because he's playing for a contract next year. Chase Brown out of the backfield has been great.
Yep.
Steelers are in turmoil right now. They're 2 games away from having their first ever losing season with Mike Tomlin as a head coach.
Yeah. With Mason Rudolph starting.
Yeah. Jake Browning all day, every day.
It's Jake Browning. And if you are worried about Ja'Marr Chase, I have a friend who's an enormous Bengals fan. I follow the Bengals pretty closely because of him. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd are going to be able to fill that void. We're seeing great things out of their older tight end, who I didn't realize was like also 27 years old. Tanner Hudson has played very well for them. They have this rookie wide receiver, Andre Yosivas, who is an excellent slot wide receiver. He is very raw right now. But if they want to move Tyler Boyd to the outside because Ja'Marr Chase is out, Yosivas caught a ball on the sidelines last week, and I think we could see a little bit more out of him. He scored like 2 touchdowns earlier this season. So you could see some good things out of some younger receivers that you don't even realize are on the Bengals that could play very well.
And you have Trent Irwin too, and he's been pretty reliable
Trent Irwin's,
in that offense.
Absolutely. All right, guys, it's time for the Week 16 streams of the week. From yours truly. Week 16 streams of the week, all available in about 50% of ESPN leagues. And I'm going to go with a guy who I can't believe is available, Baker Mayfield. Over 50% of leagues, he's out there. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game, as I mentioned earlier. And Baker is hot. 61 fantasy points and 7 touchdowns over his last 2 games. He is the QB2 in fantasy over those games. Jacksonville gives up the 4th most to quarterbacks, almost 23 points per game. And Joe Flacco just beat them for 311 yards and 3 touchdowns 2 weeks ago. At tight end, I'm going to take Hunter Henry. As I mentioned, I think he scores 2 in this game. He has scored 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, and the team is just struggling at wide receiver. Sam Laporta was the tight end overall against the Denver Broncos last week. They've given up the most points to fantasy tight ends this season. They've also allowed 6 touchdowns over their last 6 games to the position. And with defense, we're going to go with a repeat. The Indianapolis Colts, people are just not picking them up. They actually have the 2nd most defense and special teams touchdowns behind the vaunted Dallas Cowboys. They are the defense 4 on the season. They're also top 5 in sacks, takeaways, and of course touchdowns. And these are what you want when it comes to fantasy points. Since week 6, only one defense has scored fewer than 5 fantasy points against the Atlanta Falcons. And most defenses are averaging 7 fantasy points against them. That's a play you want to make. Those are the week 16 streams of the week. Full article available tomorrow.
Bam.
Boom. Well, Josh, the questions have slowed down. So that is actually the end of the show. Tell people what we have coming up and why they should be following Club Fantasy.
Oh, let's see. You got Streams of the Week article tomorrow. Don't Get Too Cute, the short video series from Zach and his daughter Madison should be dropping in the next day or two. DFS Academy Friday morning. The Sneaky Flex with the Sneaky Girls. Kelly will be on with Rowan and Macy Thursday night at 7:15. Saturday, Start Sit. Here's the best part. It is our 69th episode of Start Sit Different Day.
Nice.
Guess who we have as our guest for Saturday morning. The one and only Cooter Doodle.
I was going to say it. Oh, I was going to guess it. I promise you I didn't know. And that's exactly who I was going to guess.
Oh, man. The moment I saw it, because it was funny because I asked her to be a guest and she was like, all right, let's do it. And then when I saw it was our 69th episode, I'm like, it's Kismet.
Has to be.
Yeah, and then, of course, we have Austin's A-list article coming out Friday, and hopefully the wide receiver matchups article from Roxanne on Saturday.
Yeah, so we're going to have you guys covered all the way through. The DFS shows are actually going to continue through the Super Bowl, DFS shows and DFS articles. But if you guys have more start sit questions leading into those Saturday games, and remember, weird week when it comes to the schedule. We got the Thursday game. We have 2 Saturday games, but then 3 Monday games. In the DFS matchup report that I just dropped, I listed them all as Monday Night Football, but there's a 1, 4, and 8 o'clock game on Monday. So very weird scheduling week. But most importantly, guys, whatever holiday you celebrate, I hope you guys have a great one. Merry Christmas. We love you guys for tuning in. This show will be back next Wednesday, but there'll be plenty of opportunities to reach out to us at Club Fantasy FFL on all the social medias. You can find the articles at clubfantasyffl.com. We got one last question before I end the show. Josh, what do you got here? What do we think for QB this week? Joe Flacco or Jared Goff? It's Jared Goff in a dome. I love what Flacco's doing, but Jared Goff's playing for a possibly an NFC bye. You're going to take the guy with the little bit higher, more stakes on the line.
He's got better weapons. It's a better offense. And I get it. I get the question because, again, Goff on the road typically struggles. It's a division game.
Flacco balling out.
Defense. Yeah, and Flacco balling. Take Jared Goff. Don't second guess it.
There you go. Always remember, defense wins championships. Offense wins fantasy football. We will see you guys next week.